Hi, I'm Kristin Omdahl. I'm a creative entrepreneur embracing every aspect of life with artistic intention. Join me as I share the way I live and all the tips and tricks along the way. Allow me to inspire you to do the same. Please like, share, or comment on my videos. I'd love to hear from you. And if you subscribe to my channel, you'll be first to know when there's something new. I'm making knitted barefoot sandals today. You're going to need a size 0 set of knitting needles. I'm using double pointed needles and they come 5 or 6 to a kit. I'm only going to be using 3 today, 2 for actually knitting and 1 for holding my stitches. I'm using Be So Fine yarn, which is a fingering weight yarn, and you're going to need a pair of scissors and a yarn needle for weaving in your ends at the end. In order to show you the first set of the stitches, I thought I'd use a worsted weight yarn first just so you can see what I'm doing. So we're going to use a much thicker yarn so I can show you the first petal, and then after that I'll show you how to do the same petal on the thinner yarn and then how to finish the flower and the barefoot sandal. So we're going to start with a slip knot on our needle and we're going to knit into the front, back, and front of the same stitch. So we're going to knit into the front, the back, and the front again of the same stitch. So we're going to increase from 1 stitch to 3. We're going to turn our work and we're going to purl across all 3 stitches. Okay, turn our work. The next row is to knit the first stitch, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and knit 1. We're now up to 5 stitches. So we're going to turn our work and purl across all 5 stitches. Turn our work. We're now going to knit the first 2 stitches, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2. We're now up to 7 stitches. We're going to turn our work and knit all 7, purl all 7 stitches. Turn our work and we'll now knit the first 3 stitches. Knit 1, knit 2, and knit 3, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3. We now have a total of 9 stitches on our needles. We're going to turn our work and purl across all 9 stitches. Turn our work. We're now going to knit the first 4 stitches. Knit 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Turn our work, and we're now going to purl across all 11 stitches on our needles. Okay, next row is a little bit different. We're now going to knit the first stitch, and then we're going to do a left slanting decrease, which is a slip, slip, knit, abbreviated SSK. You're going to slip 1, slip 2, then with your left hand needle, knit those 2 together. And we're going to knit across to the last 3 stitches. Okay, we've got 3 left. We're going to knit 2 together, which is our right slanting decrease, and then knit 1. So now we're down to 9 stitches, and we're going to purl the first one, purl 2 together, so you're going to insert your right hand needle into each of the next 2 stitches on your left hand needle and purl them together. Then we're going to purl across to the last 3 stitches on our needles, and we're going to purl 2 together again and purl 1. Turn our work. We now have 7 stitches on our needles, and we're going to knit the first stitch. Then we're going to do another slip slip knit, which is slip each of the next 2 stitches, knit them together with the left hand needle, knit 1, knit 2 together, and knit 1. So this is the last portion of this section of a petal. So you want to do that for a total of 5 times to create the barefoot sandal. I'm using the flower motif from my book, Knitting Outside the Swatch. And so if you were to follow this pattern, it's actually a 6-petaled flower, but to make it a pretty barefoot sandal, I'm only going to need 5. So what I'd like to show you now is that I have my first 4 petals done to make my barefoot sandal on the size 0 needles. And this is what I was saying earlier about having a 3rd needle. I'm using it as a stitch holder. So if you want to use a stitch holder instead, you are more than welcome to do that. So what I've done is created the first 4 petals, and now I'm going to show you how to knit that same stitch pattern and for the petal, but I'm going to show you how to do it on the size 0 needles and the fingering weight yarn. So we're going to do a slip knot again and cinch that snugly onto our needle, and we're going to knit into the front, back, and front of the slip knot. So we're going to knit into the front, the back, and the front of the slip knot. And we're going to turn our work and purl across all 3 stitches. This is nothing new. This is exactly what I showed you how to do on the worsted weight yarn. We're simply repeating exactly what we did on the worsted weight yarn, but repeating it on the thinner yarn. And you'll see it just works a little bit differently, and there is a learning curve to working with thinner yarns. Oh, I dropped my stitch, so here we go. We'll purl into that one again. Okay, so purl 3 is done. We'll turn our work, and now we're going to knit 1, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, and knit 1. When you're working with really tiny needles, sometimes I think it's easier to work at a tighter tension than you're used to, and by doing that, it just feels inherently wrong because we're taught so often to relax, don't knit so tight, you're not going to get your stitches off the needles, but for some reason when I work with really tiny needles, and this could just be me, I feel like I have to hold my yarn just a little bit tighter to increase my tension. And it's part of getting comfortable with really, really tiny needles if you're not used to it too. So now we've purled across all of our stitches. We have 5 stitches on our needles now. We're going to knit 2, yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 2. Okay, we now have 7 needles on our 7 stitches on our needle. We're going to turn our work and purl across all 7 stitches. Turn our work. We'll now knit across the first 3 stitches. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 3, turn our work, and purl across all 9 stitches on our needles. Turn our work, and we're going to knit into the first 4 stitches. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yarn over, knit 1, yarn over, knit 4. Okay, turn our work. We now have 11 stitches on our needles. We're going to purl across all 11 stitches. Okay, now we'll start our decrease section. We're going to knit into the first stitch, and then we'll work an SSK or slip slip knit, left slanting decrease. And we'll knit across to the last 3 stitches on our needles. And we're going to knit the next 2 together and knit 1. Okay, on the next row, we're going to turn our work, purl the first stitch, purl 2 together over the next 2 stitches, then purl across to the last 3 stitches on the row, purl the next 2 together, and purl 1. We're going to turn our work, and now we're going to knit 1, slip slip knit, abbreviated SSK, knit 1, knit 2 together, and knit 1. So now we have 5 stitches remaining on our needles, and I'll show you what that looks like. We've got our petal that starts with a little bit of a lace eyelet at the bottom and then decreases or tapers up to 5 stitches, and now we have a total of 5 petals. I'm going to, let's see how we're going to do this. We're going to turn our work now, and we're going to purl across every stitch of the 5 petals, except we're going to purl for the first 4, but to join the petals together, I'm going to take the last stitch of one petal with the first stitch of the next petal and purl them together like that. And then you want to pull your tails snug while we're going. We're going to purl across the middle 3 and then purl 2 together with the last stitch on this petal with the first stitch on the next petal. And you want to pull on the tails as you go to keep them snug. We'll purl the middle 3 and then purl 2 together with the last stitch of this petal with the first stitch of the next petal. And then purl the middle 3. And then we'll purl the last stitch of this petal with the first stitch of the next petal. And now we'll purl the last 4 petals on this, purl the last 4 stitches on this last petal. Okay, turn our work, and we now have all 5 petals joined. And we're going to knit across the entire row. Making sure you grab our working yarn. Okay, so now our work looks like that. And we're going to turn our work, and we're going to knit 3 together across the entire row. You just want to pull on your work if it gets a little tight. Pull the petals down and try to elongate those stitches so you can get into those 3 at the same time. It's a little bit tough on this last one. There we go, I got it. Okay. Almost. Very close now. Okay. And knit the last 3 stitches together. So lay this down. This is what our work looks like now. And we're going to bind off these 7 stitches. And we're just going to bind off in the very traditional firm method of knit the first 2 stitches, pass first one up and over the second one, knit the next stitch, pass the first one up and over the second one and off the needles, and just continue to do that across the entire row. And we'll cut our yarn. And so now the petal portion of our barefoot sandal is finished. Before we continue, let's weave in our ends so we can see where we're at, and then I'll show you how to do the ties and the toe loop. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. I used a crochet hook to do the chains for the ankle straps, and that was with the crochet hook and doing about 2.5 feet long strips of chain. And I'm going to show you how we start that when I do the toe ring, and that's by tying a knot around your crochet hook. I'm using a really tiny one, a B hook, which is about 2 millimeters. And we're going to insert our hook into the tip of the petal, and we're going to yarn over our hook and pull the loop through the petal and through the loop on our hook. That's a slip stitch. And now we're going to chain, and you're going to grab the yarn with your hook facing down and pull a loop through the loop. That's chain 1, chain 2, chain 3. You want to do that 20 times. And then you're going to come back to that same spot where we joined the yarn into the tip of the petal, and you're going to slip stitch into it again, yarn over, pull the loop through the hole and through the loop on your hook, and now you can fasten off. So you've got your toe loop. Now if you're uncomfortable working with a crochet hook, I can show you how to do this with knitting needles as well. What we're going to do is insert our knitting needle into that same hole, and we're going to pull up a loop with our yarn like that. And then we'll grab a second knitting needle and we'll knit with our tail and our working yarn until we get our tail established. And we're going to knit that stitch and pull it off the left hand needle. Okay, now we're going to switch hands so that that is now our left hand needle again. And we're going to knit that stitch. And then pull tight. Okay, then we'll turn that back to our left hand. In essence, we're pretty much doing a chain with knitting needles instead of a crochet hook, or if you want to think of it in terms of a 1-stitch I-cord, it's kind of like that as well, or just 1-stitch rows of knitting. So you just want to keep moving your work to your left hand needle. After you knit the 1 stitch, move the work back to your left hand and knit 1 stitch, and then we'll move it back to our left hand. And this is the technique that I use throughout my book, Knitting Outside the Swatch, for creating joining techniques in knitting without having to use a crochet hook or any other type of a tool. So you want to do that for a total of 20 times until the loop is about 2 inches long, let's say, and then we'll fasten off and we'll sew it onto the same spot where we started this one so we have our toe ring.